Happy Sunday, everybody. Welcome aboard. I want to also give a special good afternoon to all of the ladies out there. A happy Mother's Day. I hope your Mother's Day is a good one. Hope the folks in your life are treating you well and enjoy your special day. Wow. I want to say for a just as kind of a related aside here, my friend Dave Gatton last night on his Saturday night Hobby CNC with Dave show decided to invite some uh, women CNCers onto the show and kind of get their take on the entire hobby, the business, um, just the whole world of CNC, what got them interested in it, what got them started in it. And it was really an excellent show. Now, shame on me for not doing it before we went live, but I will put a link to that video. It is a live stream, it's about an hour long. And again, he hosted it last night. I will put a link to it down in the description of this video as soon as we're finished live here. And they shared some interesting insights of what got them going, what got them started, and how they're doing. Some of the challenges they faced, which are very similar to what some of us men faced, with a few extra added wrinkles. But it was all in all a very good show. And if for nothing else, um, just to kind of look at the projects that they're creating, they're doing some spectacular work, especially considering that they haven't been at it for very long. They just kind of took the ball and ran with it, never looked back. And I mean, it really was an excellent show. I have to admit here that I kind of missed the first 10, 15 minutes because I got called to dinner and they overlapped. So I still have yet to go back and watch that first 10, 15 minutes, but it was a very good show. And I see Dave is in the crowd here. Um, yeah, he's some guy in Georgia who got me started in this. And as I like to tell folks, I am 100% his fault. So, see what happens? You do something nice for some people and they just, go crazy with it. But hey, what else have I got to do on a Sunday? Don't listen to that, Linda. I know she's in there listening. She'll come up with things for me to do. So again, I'll put a link to that live stream down in the description of this video as soon as we're going live. And I apologize for not having it there already, Dave. It should have been there. This morning, I did the companion piece video I've been talking about for a couple of weeks. I should have done this, oh gosh, about 3-4 years ago. Yeah, told you. Um, I should have done this about 3 or 4 years ago when I first published this article. And it's basically more for the people who have just kind of discovered CNC and are just kind of looking into it and haven't bought anything yet, haven't decided on anything yet. But it's for the people who really, I hesitate to say know nothing, but know very little. Because if you frequent any of the Facebook groups, I'm sure you've seen the questions in the past um, where, and I have received questions where somebody will draw up a project and then they'll try to load that CRV file from VCarve into the controller software and run the tool paths out of that CRV file. they don't realize that the CRV file is not what moves the machine. The CRV file is the design itself, that there is another step to follow after that. You have to save the G code. And from there, it's that G code that gets loaded into the control software. I would say I am asked about that probably, well, it's not quite once a month, but I'll go for a stretch of 3 or 4 months and not have that question asked, and then suddenly get 4 or 5 in a row. So it's the video has been long overdue. But I haven't seen anybody sit down and actually explain the process and the 5 steps that I went through. You know, the idea, the design or CAD, and then the CAM, and then the machining, and then the finishing. I've not seen anybody sit down and explain that there are multiple steps. It's not push a button and there you go. So hopefully, when you see these questions come up in the Facebook groups or on any of the message forums that you're in, you can kind of share that info with people, because a lot of people are under the impression that the design software is the end all and be all. And if you're experienced at all, you know that's just simply not the case. Now there is one sticking point, and I've had this discussion several times, about when it was standing here in front of my Gatton CNC, and I said that the X-axis always moves from side to side as you face the machine. And I did I did I did have one person about 45 minutes ago now, as I'm looking at the clock here. Excuse me. I had one person say, well, that's not always the case. The X doesn't always go from side to side. Well, yes, it does. And I need to I need to say it depends on how your machine is installed. When you're in the normal position, normal operating position, and you're facing the machine, X always goes from side to side. Y always goes from front to rear. Now, depending upon how your machine was installed and where you're running it from, that may mean that the gantry is moving in X. My first CNC that I built from Dave Gatton's plans, the shoestring budget CNC, that's how it was installed. That's how it was built. It was set up so that the long axis, the gantry moved in the X direction from side to side. It went almost from wall to wall. I could not get around to either end of it, what we would consider to be the front. So, but still, words have a definition, and the X-axis by very definition moves from side to side, whether the gantry is moving or the Z-axis is moving across the face of the gantry. It's the direction. It's not the name of the component. And this goes back to a video that I did that I've linked down in the description of this video already. That link is already there, where I talked about axis identification and rotation. Because I was asked several times that about why some people call the gantry the Y-axis and why some people call it the X-axis. Well, without trying to be pedantic or be that guy, they're all wrong, because it's not called any of those axes. It is the gantry. And whether it moves in the X direction or the Y direction is irrelevant. The direction is what remains the same. X is always side to side, Y is always front to rear, and Z is always up and down. So that one little controversy, and I knew somebody was going to bring it up. I'm kind of surprised it took them that long to do it. But that's the short explanation of why I said that. And that's to keep everybody on the same sheet of music. Because when you're in that software and you're drawing, X is always side to side and Y is always front to rear. On the software, it looks like top to bottom. And that's the same with any software where you have a coordinate position. If you look at your imaging software, somewhere around the perimeter, you're going to find an XY coordinate. Even in something like Microsoft Paint, if you look down at the bottom of the screen, you will find an XY coordinate where your cursor is. X is always side to side. Y is always front to rear. On the screen, it's top to bottom. And that's a uniform standard that everybody uses in various industries. So it's trying to keep that standard going is why I said that. So hopefully, without belaboring the point, that kind of clears that up. So I don't figure any of y'all have any questions on that. Let's see. Okay, here we go. Michael Mazalik says, ShopBot is not the same. Back to front is X, side to side is Y. Why? Because they can. Uh-huh. Yes. And then Pablo Diablo, excellent name, by the way, says, I don't mean to be but the origin can be rotated. Yes, it can be rotated. And that's why I did that video on rotating, on axis rotation. Because you're absolutely right. It can be rotated. And the reason for that video and the reason I keep bringing it up is because I get questions from people saying, well, but my long axis is the X, it's not the Y. So do I have to rotate my my drawing 90 degrees or because it won't fit the other way? And that's why I created that video, is to keep folks on the same sheet of music because there is an industry standard. And if ShopBot wants to change the rules, I mean, I guess that's up to them. But, you know, they're unnecessarily creating confusion, you know. Sometimes it's less about why there's a system and more about the fact that we have a system. I mean, think about driving. We know that red light means stop. We know that green light means go. Yellow light means stop if you can do so safely. The colors are not important. What's important is we all know what those colors mean. If I suddenly decide that green means stop and red means go, and yellow means close your eyes and hope for the best, then there's no sense in having the system because the system breaks down. So I don't know. It's kind of like one manufacturer all of a sudden deciding that they're to label their 10 amp circuit breakers as 40 amp circuit breakers because they want to. You know, that can also be very dangerous in that. Let's see. Pablo says Mach 3 can also rotate the axis. I'm right 95% of the time. Yes, and that's not, Pablo, that is not to say that you can't rotate the axis. You can, and I get into that further in that video. The whole point is I'm trying to help the people who've never done this before relate it to what they're seeing on the screen, relate that to the spoil board of their machine. When you're looking at the screen, you can imagine yourself hovering over your machine and looking down at the spoil board. So side to side on the screen is the same as side to side on the machine. And front to rear on the screen is the same as front to rear on the machine. And those things have names. The direction doesn't change. Left and right don't change if you turn around. It's still left and right. That's what I'm getting at. Terry McQueen, but why would you want to? Sometimes it does come in handy. You have a situation like I'm talking about where, for instance, my machine will cut 50 wide by 34 deep. If I have something that's 50 wide by 35 deep, let's say 35 by 35, I might have to turn that around to fit it. So I would need to rotate the axis so that I could cut it correctly. So my brain didn't go in that direction. So maybe the measurements I just gave is a little bit off. So, but there are times that you will have to rotate an axis to make something fit on the table. And it'll look like, it'll look like everything is turned 90 degrees. Well, my head doesn't go that direction. So you can rotate the axis in Mach 3 and it'll be okay. So it's just so you can read it right and what have you. All right. So I'll not belabor that point. It's just, I am that guy. I'm the word nerd. And I just, it bothers me when people change the definition of a term to suit their purposes, kind of like the laser folks have done, But then again, that's what happens when you major in English. Let's see. Oh, yeah. Michael Mazalik says Hawaii also has blue stop signs. Go figure. Yeah, you go to Europe and you'll see a blue traffic light. What that means is turn off your engine while you're sitting at the traffic light. And then when the blue light goes out, start it up. But if you don't know that, you're sitting there looking at a blue light going, what? Let's see. Pablo, I will drop a link to Michael's channel in the description of this video as soon as we're done. And Michael is the 3D guru, believe me. And let's see. Got the notes for that. Okay. Moving on, we did have a couple of questions here and a follow-up. Let's see. Brooks Martin wants to know how far beyond the bits spec cut depth can you push it? In what context are we talking about? Are you talking about, let me get out a bit here. I remembered to grab some this time. Okay. Are you talking about the length of the cutting flutes here versus just straight shank? Or are you talking about your depth per pass? When you talk about beyond the bits spec cut depth, there are some bits that cannot be pushed beyond that point. The length of the flute. If there's any kind of a flare or anything, you really can't push it beyond that. So let me see here if Brooks has updated his, in the Z-axis, but if you're trying to go deeper than the flutes, there's some things to be careful for. If it's just a straight end mill like this one here, where the cutting diameter is the same diameter as the shank, you're okay. I've never had to go deeper than the flute length on a standard 1/4 inch end mill. When I decided that and I don't have it right here with me, when I decided I needed to cut deeper, I bought a 1/2 inch end mill because the cut depth is deeper. Okay, it says here, I pushed a 1/4 inch end mill, 1/4 inch shank down to 2 inches. If it worked, you didn't break it, and you didn't, what you're trying to avoid is you're trying to avoid that shank moving over into the uncut material. So if you're doing, as you said, cutting it 2 inches deep with a 1-inch cut depth, so long as you didn't do a separate last pass that moved in, you're fine. If you did a separate last pass and it moved in, say 0.1 of an inch, you might just break a bit. Now, John here says when he cut above the flute, the shank left burn marks in the sidewall. And that is a legit concern. And that's why I went with a 1/2 inch end mill that had a longer flute length. The thing is, we're dealing with side forces on some of these bits. Carbide is pretty brittle. So I've seen people ask, well, why don't they make 3 or 4 inch long bits? Well, because do you want that long of a bit shattering on you? Because I don't know, it's part liability on the part of the manufacturer. It's also part practicality, because if you need to cut that deep, you might need a larger diameter, just simply for the integrity of the bit. Because when you get past a certain length, it doesn't take much side pressure to snap that bit or break it into 3 or 4 pieces. And you don't want something spinning at, 18,000 RPM come flying at you. It can be done, but it's not advised. And I'm not advising anybody to do that. If you've got 1-inch long flutes, don't cut beyond if your flute depth is 1 inch, I wouldn't cut beyond that. But look into, for instance, this is a Bosch 1/4 inch end mill, and the cut depth on it, the flute depth is 1 inch. So I wouldn't go any deeper than 1 inch on this. If I need to go deeper, I have some that have 1.25 inch flute length. And that's what I'll use on that. Those are, I have a white side and I have an Amana with a 1.25 inch flute length. And I don't push up to where I have have just the shank rubbing against the sidewall, because what John is talking about is a legit concern. And if it's burning, it's close to snapping. That's the way I was taught anyway. So let's see here. John also had a follow-up on the epoxy turning amber and yellowing from last week's video when my connection was really rotten. West System got back to him and says the 205 fast hardener does turn amber, the others not so much. He says that he was using the fast because it has a wider temperature range, and the can he got was already 7 months old. Okay, so it was specifically the 205 fast hardener and the fact that it was 7 months old. So for those who are following along on the epoxy saga, which I have not started yet, that was the concern they had last week, was the epoxy turning yellow. So what John was the consensus that you needed to get a different hardener to prevent that, or just fresher hardener to prevent that? So please let me know. Let's see here. Landis Stutz wants to know, when you built the shop, how did you get internet to it? Built a separate shop last summer, but did not put internet to it yet. Okay, when I dug the trench to run electricity out here, I put the electrical cables in a 2-inch conduit. Then I buried one empty conduit next to it, a 3/4-inch conduit, in case I needed, I'm future proofing, in case I needed to pull another line in. Then I buried it about a foot to get some separation. And I buried another conduit with a Cat 8 internet cable in it. Again, trying to future proof. If we get 1 gig service, I've already got Cat 8 cable. Now it'll retro back. That's what I'm using now. Cat 5 and Cat 6 works fine with it. But 1 gig service would not work with it. So if we ever get 1 gig, I'm ready for it. I pulled that Cat 8 cable through it and ran it out here, and then ran it to the router inside the house, and then buried the rest of the trench, put in the warning tape, and then, finished burying it off. So basically I'm hardwired from the router in the house all the way here to, I ran it in a separate conduit underneath the shed and brought it up on the side wall behind me here, and then put in a wall outlet with an Ethernet port. So I just plug an Ethernet cable into that wall, plug it into the back of the computer, and I'm online. So I know that's probably more than you wanted to know, but that's how I did it. I have to hardwire in. I can't rely on Wi-Fi or wireless, because I do this. I live stream from here, and I wanted to have that option. And I know from experience that running Wi-Fi or wireless to live stream is a rotten choice. So if you're not doing that, you can probably get away with mobile hotspot or Wi-Fi. Yeah, in fact, Brooks is just suggesting he uses his phone as a mobile hotspot. If you're not broadcasting, if you're not live streaming or what have you, you probably don't need it. But I knew this shop was being built as a shop, and B, for lack of a better term, a studio. I had to be hardwired in, because Wi-Fi does not cut it for live streaming. So I hope that answered that. So, and like I said, the extra expense, I had to run the cable anyway. That was $20, and the conduit, I think, was another 15 or 16 bucks. So I already had the trench. I buried it a foot shallower than the electrical, just simply to avoid any crosstalk between, get some separation. That's what is suggested anyway. And it's worked fine. The only internet problems I have had out here are those caused either by me and my settings, or by the cable internet going out. So hope that answered that. Let's see. Percy Kuka says, using a 3mm tapered ball nose on a 3 kilowatt spindle, carving a depth of 14mm on MDF or hardwood, what spindle feed and speed would you go? Your reply would answer a few doubts towards what's been suggested. I can't tell you what speed and feed to go. And nobody really reliably can, simply because there are other variables. MDF is going to be different from hardwood. Number one. because MDF is softer and will cut faster than hardwood will. When you're using a tapered ball nose, usually you have done a roughing pass, but not always. If you're doing a roughing pass to clear away the bulk of the material and you're just removing a thin skin with that tapered ball nose, you should be able to run faster than if you didn't do a roughing pass. You would have to slow down because it's removing the bulk of the material as it does the 3D carve. Now, people will tell you that not running a roughing pass makes the carve go faster, but now you have two tool paths. I don't see it that way because the roughing tool path will remove most of the material. You're only taking off a thin skin. I generally set my machining allowance to where I'm running half a millimeter, about 20 thousandths of an inch. So about I'm leaving a half millimeter skin, and that's all that tapered ball nose is removing. So it's in less danger of breaking the tip off of that bit because 3 millimeter is not a big bit. And I don't know how rigid your machine is. I don't know what type of drive system your machine has. I would start conservative and then move up on the speed and feed to see what you get. There is no magic number. And every type of wood is going to react slightly differently. And if you look at the specs that are given by the tool manufacturers, like Amana will tell you straight up that their suggested feeds and speeds are suggestions only. They're to be taken as a starting point because your machine, the material you're cutting, and your spindle or router those are three factors there that are going to change all those numbers. They're suggestions only. So trial and error, do your due diligence, but I can't give you a number. It would be impossible. It would be a wild guess, and I would probably be wrong. So, and I apologize for that. Let's see here. Let's see. Let me go here. We have Peter Van Vliet asking, do you work with live edge material much? Not much. Making your own, does it CNC okay once dried out, etc.? I don't work with live edge material much at all. I've only surfaced a couple of slabs on the CNC. It does work well, but it's just like any other operation, whether you're running it through a planer or using a hand plane or a hand planer. Wood is always going to move long after the tree is dead. It's going to change. And that's the only thing about it that stays the same, is it's going to change. It does a good job. Sometimes you have to, like one slab I had to shim up the bottom of it to get it to sit more or less level, and then screw it down to hold it in place. One slab I flipped it over to where the quote unquote bottom side was facing up, and I shimmed a piece of plywood on it and then screwed into the slab from the bottom through those shims, then flipped it over and then screwed that piece of plywood to the machine to be able to hold it down sort of level, and then surface that top side, flip it over, and then surface the bottom to thickness. You do need to make sure the wood is dry, and because as it dries further, it's going to warp and twist again and start cracking and what have you. But it does work. It works very, very well, and you can get real accurate on your thicknesses. And it's on my list of things to do, is I'm going to be doing a video on surfacing and surfacing to thickness. So it's on the list, and I will get there eventually. But yes, it does work, and it works very well. Okay, let's see. The Fuzz wants to know, what is the point of the scale factor used in calculating total machining time? Okay, for that, let's go over to Aspire. And this is in, come on, share screen. This is in the, oh, you're going to make me do it by hand, are you? Okay, my Stream Deck doesn't want to play. So let's share the screen, go over here. There we are. Now, come along, StreamYard. Boy, this computer is slow. And I just added RAM to it too. Okay, here we go. What he's referring to is over here in, no, not Save Toolpath. What am I doing? Toolpath Summary. There we go. We're talking about the scale factor. This is something that you will have to adjust. And basically what it's doing is it's a factor that you will apply that will help get that total machine time estimate closer to, quote unquote, the truth. Basically, run a tool path and look on your controller for elapsed time. How long did it actually take to run that tool path? Because if vCarver Aspire is telling you that it'll take 10 minutes, and you go outside and you run it, and it actually took 5 minutes to run, you can come in here and you can enter a scale factor of, like I have, of 2.0. And that should get the estimated time up here closer to the true time. Now, it may not be an even round number like 2.0. It may be 2.1463 to get you dialed in. Personally, I don't get that nitpicky when it comes to calculate the total machine time. This scale factor is there to get you a little bit closer, and that should not be millimeters per second. That should be inches per minute, because that's what I use. That's basically there to help you dial in and get that estimate to be closer than what actually happens out on the machine. It doesn't change anything in the tool path. It doesn't change anything in the drawing or in the G code that you're calculating. All it does is it's used by vCarve or Aspire to give you an accurate time estimate. But remember, this total machining time is just an estimate. So that's what that is. So let's see here. For some reason, yeah, my StreamYard doesn't, on my Stream Deck, I'm going to have to reprogram it. So I hope that answered that there, the Fuzz. So let's see here. It looks like I've caught up with all the questions. Did anybody else have any questions? Or let me go up and see, did I miss any? Let's see, live edge material. Okay, so John says probably both, meaning get a fresh can of hardener and use another. But evidently they said fast was the most vulnerable to age turning. Color doesn't affect cure strength. Yeah, but the whole point of doing the epoxy is to, number one, protect, and also to add color, especially in the case of epoxy inlays. I mean, you're adding color to it, and that's the whole point. And if it's going to change the color that you're putting in there, well, that's just unacceptable. So, but excellent point, and thanks for that tip on not to use the 205 hardener. And that's the fast hardener. Okay. Okay. I will remember that. Yeah, right. Okay. We've got a few more minutes here. Um, yeah, and Dave Gatton makes an excellent point. I really need to put Mach 3 on this computer so I can bring up the screen and show it. He uses the simulation in Mach 3 to get an estimated cycle time much closer than Vectric VCarve Pro. That is true. Um, the but then again, also, and this is going to change the um, the cycle time in estimated cycle time in Mach 3 um, will get you closer than Vectric will. And excuse me. But it also, as Mike Mazalik points out here, Vectric does not include acceleration or deacceleration of the tool path, where Mach 3 does, but neither of them account for you increasing the feed rate on the fly, which is what I do. I start out conservative and I see how it's cutting, then I'll increase or decrease the feed rate. And that's why I don't really rely on those estimated cutting times, because the minute I increase that feed rate, any estimate has just been thrown out the window. I mean, Vectric may say that a cut is going to take 40 minutes, but when I bump it up 210%, because the material is cutting right and looks good that way, it may take 16 minutes, so it's right out the window. So let's see. Stephen Main says, I ran external rated Ethernet cable to the shed, connected another router in the shed to allow multiple wired connections, and set up wireless on the shed routers to be the same as house wireless. Yeah, I mean, you can get into networking, which I am not a network guy. Trust me, I'm not a home network guy. Everything we own is physically plugged into the router, with the exception of our phones and our tablets. And that's only because they don't have Ethernet ports. So let's see. He said, goes further to say, this way mobile devices are connected seamlessly. Yes, and that's a legit use. Like I said, you may not need a hardwired connection in your shop shed, simply because in your shop slash shed, simply because you're probably not going to be live streaming from it. Now, if you are invited to be a guest on a live stream, you may want to run a temporary Cat 5 or Cat 6 cable out there to hardwire in, simply to keep your voice from roboting or your picture from freezing up, because that does happen. People don't realize how much bandwidth this uses, because you're adding various layers, and each one of them pulls more power, pulls more bandwidth. And where you and I could sit and chat on a video chat face to face wireless, the minute we start broadcasting, your service, your wireless or Wi-Fi just doesn't have enough oomph to push that signal through, and you end up roboting or breaking up or whatever. So let's see. Dennis Fagan says, I've been resurfacing my spoil board and keep getting soft limit errors in X. Can you discuss soft limits? Running VCarve Pro on a Onefinity. I don't know the control system a Onefinity uses. That is in the controller software. It's not in VCarve. So I don't know if you're using Universal G-Code Sender or something else. But it's soft limits are okay. Hard limits are the switches on physically mounted to your machine. Soft limits are limits you place in the software to keep you from, overextending or overrunning a limit. Personally, I don't use them. I'm not telling anybody to turn off their soft limits, Personally, I don't use them. I figure the limit switches are there for a purpose, and I use them for that purpose. But much like yourself, Dennis, I kept getting false soft limit triggers, and it was a pain to reset and recover from a soft limit trigger. I just turned them off. I am not telling you to turn them off. I will say go to the Onefinity Facebook forum, their support forum there. They have a Facebook group, and ask your question over there, because I am not familiar with the controller software that the Onefinity uses. I really don't know anything about it. I use Mach 3, and I can tell you about soft limits in Mach 3, but I would be guessing when it comes to any other controller. So personally, I understand the reason for soft limits. I understand their purpose. I just find them to be more of a problem than they're worth. You know, if and there's also something else a little bit different. And I know you're trying to surface your spoil board, but if I've got a 50 by 34 cutting area. If I'm putting a piece of material on my table that's 12 inches by 12 inches, it's in no danger of hitting any limit. So having that extra layer of protection is just kind of, I don't know. To me, it's causes more problems than they solve. But that's just my opinion. But I really don't know what to say about any controller other than Mach 3, just simply because I don't have any experience with it. So, okay, I think I've got caught up with the questions, so we might as well go ahead and end it here so you folks can get on with your Sunday and get on with your Mother's Day. Want to also just get back on subject here with channel memberships. I've had a couple of people ask me about it. I've got a couple more things to do behind the scenes, and the channel memberships will go live first week of June. Pull up my calendar here, and come on, calendar, there you go. Channel memberships will go live June 1st, which is a Wednesday. And one of the perks of becoming a channel member is a members only live stream on Monday evenings, 5:30 Pacific, 8:30 Eastern. And unlike these Sunday live Q&As, they will have no time limit. We will go, if you want to go 3 hours, we'll go 3 hours. And we are going to get further in depth and talk about topics. And it's basically going to be member driven. The members will decide what we talk about. I will have certain members on as guests. We will work on individual problems and troubleshoot and get hot and heavy into it. That'll be for members only. And there'll be more in the announcement videos coming. That will be on, again, channel members will go live on June 1st. And the first members only live stream will be Monday, June 6th. So that's coming up down the road here. Let's see. Okay, we had a couple questions here thrown in. Robert Dymock says, could some of your computer issues, speed or refresh issues, be due to the age and or video card memory issues? Yes, that, and it's a small computer. This computer was bought as a office computer when I was in a former career. It was mainly to look at 2 different websites, draw up contracts, and be check emails, and that was all. It's a bare bones computer. I had it open to put more RAM in it a couple of days ago. The motherboard is about the size of this Amana toolbox. It's a very, very cheap computer. That will be upgraded soon. Let's see. Percy also says there's been a sudden demand for acoustic panels. I've been cutting the holes so far. Drilling makes the job go faster. Do you suggest drilling on CNC? Drilling is great. Drilling will speed things up, but you must use an upcut bit for drilling. You must, let me say it again, you must use an upcut end mill or bit for drilling. Do not use a downcut bit for drilling. You will start a fire. I've done it. I have done it. This is not apocryphal, a friend of a friend, or a guy knew somebody who had a cat that once. No, I did it. I started a fire by drilling with a downcut bit. Don't do it. So, other than that, yes. Let's see. Lewis Denton, that is yet to be determined. It's not going to be much, though. Would it be associated for absolute beginners as well? I don't know what you're referring to. You're talking about the, are you talking about the membership? Okay. I don't know. Let's see. Rob Sandstrom, Generations Custom Creations. I like core drilling bits from tools today when I drill. Okay. I've not tried them. Generally speaking, if I'm drilling holes, I just go with a bit that's smaller than the diameter I need to drill, and I pocket. It's the same end result. It takes a little longer, but no big deal. I'll explain a little bit more about channel memberships when I do the announcement video. It basically, the reason for channel memberships, I've had people ask me why I don't have a Patreon. And to me, I'm going to be frank with you folks. To me, Patreon, I've always looked at that as panhandling. I just don't like it. I don't feel right about it. Then again, I never wanted to be a pay-for-play guy. But I have had people ask me, well, is there a way I can support you monthly? So I say, yeah, let's go ahead and activate channel memberships. And I mean, I've had channel memberships offered to me for a little over a year, and I didn't like the idea because I don't think I'm bearing my soul here, but this is a hobby for me. This is not a get rich quick thing for me. I'm not a guy who's driven by cash. This is my hobby. I do this for fun, and I genuinely try to help folks to see that nothing we're doing here is black magic or voodoo or anything like that. But there have been people who are asking me, how can I contribute? How can I support you? How can I do this? So I said, all right, let's come up with a couple of tiers of channel membership that are affordable. And if folks want to do it, they can. If they don't want to do it, they don't have to. It's 100% understandable. With channel memberships, you offer your members a perk, something additional to make it worth their while, because you're spending your money. It's like a magazine subscription. And so I have to give something of value in exchange for that, because if not, to me, it's just panhandling. So I don't have the time. There are not enough hours in a day. I don't have the time to make an extra video. So that was out of the question. So I thought the only thing I can do is I can do an additional live stream. Then I had to go and figure out which day. I have friends who have live streams. I don't want to overlap with them. Dave Gatton does a live stream on Saturday night. I don't want to overlap with him, mainly because I'm in that live stream and I want to watch too. I'm not on his live stream. I'm out in the chat hooting and hollering with y'all, So I ended up with Monday night. And if you want to become a channel member, great. And I appreciate you more than you will ever know. Having said that, nothing that is currently on the channel now will change. Nothing. I'm going to continue to post videos every other week. I'm going to continue to do these live Q&As every Sunday. That will not change. Nothing's going to go away. This is just going to be an extra added thing for those who would like to become a channel member. And it will be driven by the members, what you want to do. If you want to get hot and heavy into V carving text, we'll do a deep dive into V carving text. If you want to talk about your favorite baseball team, we'll talk about your favorite baseball team. I'm going to invite members as guests to be on the broadcast with me, and we can discuss whatever you want. So it's just you're going to decide what it is. So the first few may be clunky. I may be by myself. It may be me and one person, and that's great. I'll throw you a link. You can come on and we'll chit chat for however long you can stand me. But it's going to be a way to support the channel if you choose to, and have a little bit, I don't know, more fun with it. So Sargon Tavor, my man, the myth, the legend. You can see it right behind me there, Sargon, standing there on that gooseneck right there. The man that sent me the GoPro. Anyway, absolutely right. Never put your credit card on Patreon. My card's been hacked both times I donated. Yeah, I don't know. I'm not I'm not a fan of Patreon. It just felt like I was panhandling. That's why you don't hear me talk about super chats or donations much. Thank you to everybody who does. I appreciate you guys more than you ever know, but this is fun for me, and y'all keep it fun for me. And doing things like this is what really spurs me on to keep going. So let's go ahead and end this before we get too maudlin here. I'm going to put a link to the live stream Dave Gatton had last night with Lisa C. and Mary Mallory talking about their CNC adventures. Excellent show. And number one, if you're not subscribed to Dave Gatton, shame on you. You really should be. There'll be a link to his video, and you can subscribe to his channel from there. And he does a live stream every Saturday night. I'm going to get the time wrong, so I'm not even going to talk about it. Just subscribe and you'll get a notification. And I'm also going to link Michael Mazalik's channel, the 3D Guru, down in the description of this. I'll do both of those as soon as we're finished live here. We'll go ahead and wrap it up. I will see you next week for another open Q&A. So have your questions ready, and have a great Mother's Day. Take care of Mama, and see you next week. Go do something cool. Go make some chips. Get out of here. Go up. Go. Thanks, and y'all take care.